Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where we chat with startup founders just like you from all over the globe. Each episode, we bring you practical and actionable tips to help you escape the cubicle and begin your own startup journey. Make sure you take notes. Take it away, Kevin.
This is Kevin Pruitt with Rising Tide Startups, and my special guest today is Donna Griffit. Donna, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
It's great to be here, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me.
We've had a great pre-chat and had some common travel that we've had in our background, and a really good chance to catch up. But Donna, if you and I met at a networking event, how would you introduce yourself to me?
Hi, I'm Donna, and I'm a corporate storyteller and pitch alchemist. I have spent the last 2 decades making sure that people, organizations, and startups are not boring and achieve their business goals through delivering powerful messages.
That is an elevator pitch intro if I have ever heard one. You had that one prepared beforehand.
Might have. I either confirm or deny, but I will tell you this, it changes all the time based on like kind of instinct, who I'm talking to, what I feel like saying that day, playing around with it, keeping it interesting, which is like the first tip I can give to your listeners. It's always be ready to pitch yourself. And what I just gave is actually not even an elevator pitch. It's what I call a handshake pitch, or in the era of post-COVID, the elbow bump pitch or fist bump pitch.
Exactly
I don't know what we're doing now. It's funny because it's like being back in person. There's like that awkward moment. You see someone, do you shake hands? Do you hug? It's one of those like meeting your ex or something. But yeah, so that's my mini elevator pitch.
So nobody wakes up and decides I'm going to be a corporate storyteller. I mean, as I was preparing for this, there was a couple other interviews that I watched that you had done and or listened to, and one question that came to mind that I wanted to ask you was, okay, can we go back to when you were like 12 years old or 10 years old, and can you tell me what play you were in school that kind of piqued this interest of in the dramatic arts? Or was there something in your background that kind of you can look back kind of think, you know what, that really is kind of my intro to this?
Absolutely. So there's been a few pivotal points in my life. I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I want to be a storyteller. And probably if you'd asked me when I was my daughter's ages, they're 9 and 6, storytelling would have been somebody coming to school and reading a book to them, maybe wearing a costume. Exactly. I was a little neighborhood meetup with some of the women of our neighborhood. And when I said storyteller, this woman she's in her like late 70s, she's like, oh, we used to have a storyteller. She'd come and gather all the kids into a yard and they'd all come and listen to stories. I'm like, yeah, if that happened today, that might be a bit disturbing I don't know if they'd send their kids over to somebody appearing in their yard. But I realized it's called storytelling. I started calling myself that in 2008 when we had our last really big crisis that we're kind of in the throes of one now. I don't know yet to say if it's quite as severe as the one back then. We'll see. I thought the beginning of COVID was kind of heading into one of those. But I had been working with enterprise companies for a long time. And this was on the heels of, if you want the real backstory, I'd always been an actress. I'd always loved working with people. Something in me knew that being a starving artist was not the lifestyle I wanted to live. So I tried to find something that combined those two passions. Found out about drama therapy. It was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's exactly, it combines the best. And then got in to get my master's at NYU, and it moved to Manhattan, and then found out that the career opportunities were basically that of a starving artist. So I'm like, okay, didn't leave the acting.
We got to tweak something here. Yeah.
We got to tweak something here. So one thing that I'm a firm believer in is ikigai. Which is the Japanese term for like your reason for being. So finding something that you're good at, finding something that you love doing, finding something the world needs, and something you can be paid for. If you've got all 4 of those, it's the perfect blend. I'm like, okay, I've got this talent for being in front of people. I'm engaging. And later in my career, I realized that I'm pretty good at making things up on the fly, which is a really huge part of storytelling. And I'd never considered myself a writer, and here I am, the author of a book that's coming out. And I'm like, okay, I love doing it. I love being with people. I love being up in front of people. What the world needs now well, even back in 2003 when I was having this conversation is okay, what do I do with that? I didn't even know the world's needs as much. But somebody mentioned to me, a lecturer at NYU said, oh, I have this friend that does group trainings and travels around the world and talks to corporations. And I'm like, bingo.
That's me.
And I got on it and I looked where I could study, and lo and behold, NYU had a continuing education program for it. And into those studies, I saw an ad on Craigslist looking for a corporate trainer in presentation and business writing skills. I'm like, well, I've not really done this yet, but hey, sent out my resume, was hired by an amazing company called Boyer Communications Group, and traveled the globe with them, teaching presentation skills and business writing in large enterprises. And then came 2008. So to circle back to that moment of storytelling,
Not
that's
many
when
people find their career on Craigslist.
No,
That's a unique segue. You just kind of flew by that one.
It's amazing because, first of all, Craigslist, I think, is a treasure trove. Craig himself is an amazing person. He's a philanthropist. He does a lot. He supports women entrepreneurs. I didn't know this until I got involved with a great organization that has pitch competitions for women founders. And it hasn't changed its look and feel, but there's gold to be found there. I mean, this it survived for a long time. But I got lucky. I really got lucky. And then when 2008 hit, it was like this, oh my God, what now? Companies stopped paying for travel, stopped paying for training that wasn't essential. And I kind of found myself at a crossroads. And that's when storytelling came into play. And that's when I was introduced to the wonderful world of startups. My first startup client was a cardiothoracic surgeon who needed help with his public speaking. He was the head of a big, very prestigious sort of combination of cardiosurgeons and cardiologists who apparently don't really like each other too much. The Jets and the Sharks, if you.
Yeah, there you go.
And he had 2 medical devices that he had created, and he said, "Can you do? I have a pitch event. I've been invited to pitch 5 minutes for each company. Can you help me with these?" And that was a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
And that was like when you take the leap of, well, I've never done this before, but a story is a story, and boom.
Well,
and
Richard Branson says, learn how to do it. Say yes and figure it out.
Oh my gosh, I so agree to that, because I think women a lot of times, and founders also in general, make the mistake of hesitating, and it's not like letter perfect. Yep. Can I really say that in my pitch? But we're not there yet. And that's where you need to really just believe in yourself, take that leap. I don't mean lie. Right. Storytelling is not lying. It's not embellishing the truth. It's telling the truth in the most powerful way possible. And I mean, media has been doing it for years. They're the ultimate storytellers.
Yep. They have to be, and it had to be.
Of course.
It's interesting. I heard you on another podcast talking about a story that you were telling, and you said, I don't know if that was the exact details, but it doesn't matter. And that phrase stuck out to me. I mean, what you just said a second ago, you said, it's not that we're lying, storytelling's not lying, but storytelling doesn't always let the facts get in the way of a good story.
That's what Mark Twain says. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story. That's one of my favorite quotes.
But it's true. And there is, it's the details are not the important. It's the principles really behind the story.
The essence. And as long as you're not hurting anyone, as long as you're not lying about your numbers, your growth, your skills, think about it. Even stories that we've told our kids or we've been told all the years, we don't know the exact facts. I tell stories to my daughters that I heard from my mother, who heard from her grandmother, passed down. So I'm probably changing it, but we can take that to serve our purpose, to preserve our history, to pass on morals. It's funny, my 9-year-old was telling me, and I'm learning a lot from her education experience, and she said that there's 2 kinds of myths. There's the creation myth and the morality myth. And when I thought about it, that's really what the kind of storytelling that startups do. We're either talking about our creation of the product, of the market, of the need, or morality, like why this works, why we need this. And those are the stories that just work today as well. Aesop's fables just told in the business world.
No doubt. And those are universal truths, and that have just broad applicability.
Here's a quick
but
word from our sponsor, Pod Brand Media.
As a business owner, new sales leads are essential. At Podbrand Media, we create a branded podcast for you to generate those leads by interviewing your best potential clients as subject matter experts. Not only creating great rapport, but also great content to share in your industry. Affordable and effective. Contact us today at podbrandmedia.com to learn more.
It is interesting that there are certain things, when you look back about it, products or services, there are certain things that you do not have to educate potential clients on its value, because it's really easy to determine ROI. It's really easy to determine applicability. Do you need gas for your cars? Absolutely. Yeah, it's easy to sell that. Storytelling is a little more seemingly ethereal, and you gotta, somehow you've got to convince me as a business owner that there's a tangible, benefit to this service. What have you found and that's my assumption. So what have you found to be true when you're pitching your service, when you're meeting with new clients, that type of thing? Tell me how you kind of overcome that hurdle.
So for me, it's slightly different than it would be for a startup who's struggling with the same thing. So I can speak to both, but let's talk about like someone who would be your listener when trying to pitch your product. The biggest mistake that I find that founders or service providers make is being so in love with their product, their solution, their technology, that's all they want to talk about. And it reminds me of, when my first baby was born, and somebody would say like, oh, show me some pictures. And I just would go on and on and on and on and on, missing the fact that like I could have shown 3 and that would have been enough. And then you don't lose your audience. So you need to constantly be thinking about the other side. You don't want to bore them. You don't want to disinterest them. And people love talking about themselves. People love hearing about themselves. People love being understood and felt. And oh my gosh, they get me. So if you can show that you understand their need and you meet it in a way that is going to make their lives better, stronger, more efficient, better quality, then that you have undeniable value to them. Right. And that's where storytelling can be super valuable. And because storytelling is not just like, oh, let's tell stories around the campfire. It's part of that. Yeah. Because people connect to stories, but storytelling has a structure, which I talk about a lot in the book. It's ancient. We're talking thousands and thousands of years old, going back to ancient Greece and the Bible and any of these, mythical places that we draw from history and religion and culture from, passed down for years and years. But there's a very specific way that these stories were written, just so that humans could take them in, understand them, and remember them. And there's chunks. So there's like an investor pitch is a 4-act play, as I lay it out in the book. So you've got 4 acts, just like if you were going to a Broadway show, that you would bring about and talk about and kind of engage them, but there's a very specific order to it. And that's the scientific structure of a story.
But I'm talking about specifically like when you're pitching the storytelling service to a client, what is the learning curve that they have to go through in their mind to see value in this? I mean, general value, absolutely. We need to be able to tell our story better. I understand that. But specifically when you're talking about, is this a pitch, are we assisting with a pitch? Are you talking to me about potential customers about our product or service?
It could be either or both. Yeah. All the above. Usually people come to me very frustrated because they've spent dozens of hours working on some kind of presentation or pitch, whether it's sales to customers, whether it's ideation to get partners, or whether it's to investors to fund them. And they've really worked hard and they feel like they're running around in circles and it's just not working.
That's great.
And they've spent all this time where obviously as a CEO or as a founder, you have much better things to be doing with your time than churning out mediocre messages. And then they come to me and in 2 hours, we've cracked their deck. It's completely fleshed out, completely scripted. And you've probably seen, Kevin, the hype around ChatGPT the past few weeks. That's just suddenly AI is everywhere. And we have these AI chatbots creating dialogue, creating content, and people are mesmerized. Oh, sorry, I've been doing that for 20 years. I'm the ChatGPT.
Right.
So people feed me.
I'm the OG ChatGPT.
I'm the OG. I'm the OA. So it's like, they feed me the data and I output their story. That's what I was talking about, that third gift that I didn't realize even the world needed. I didn't know I had it in me.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of a later in life discovery that I found. And I think part of it also is a skill that evolved over years, the more mileage you get on it. Yeah, so it's like they can walk away in 2 hours with a
Mm-hmm.
deck that gets them results. That is good value for money. So I mean,
You got to know what questions to ask, though. If you're only going to spend 2 hours with me, you have to get in my head pretty
Mhm.
quickly, and not only my head, my heart.
Yes, your head, heart, and gut.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a simultaneous dialogue between them and whoever their audience is, which usually most of the time is investors.
Mm-hmm.
I have them answer my outline, my cheat sheet for, the deck, where they
Right.
kind of go through the steps of giving me the data that I need to input into the system. And it's built out of questions that investors ask, the most common questions. And I've just chunked those questions together. Now we might come up with more questions, and as I get into the session, new things will emerge, but they're bringing me the raw data. I'm
Mm-hmm.
cooking it for them into a delicious meal right in front of their eyes. And then let them taste, this need anything more, and then they can adjust, add some salt, add some pepper, and we move on. So we're co-creating something it's theirs. It's just fed through my storytelling filter.
Yep. I mean, yeah, it's their kitchen. The
Yeah,
ingredients they
yeah,
brought to the table, but
yeah,
you're just like,
yeah,
how
yeah.
do
I
we kind
told
of
them
tweak
what
this for you?
ingredients I need. They bring me their unique twist on that.
Yep.
Every company's going to have a different flavor. Every company's going to have a different texture. It's just about bringing to the table and telling your best story possible.
Mm. Have you chase a little rabbit here? Have you taken any like self-assessment, like used any self-assessment tools like Myers-Briggs, like Enneagram, like any of like DISC, like any of the kind of assessment tools?
On myself,
Yeah. Have
I
you
don't
ever
think
done
I've
that?
ever done Myers-Briggs. There's a great book called The Color Code, which it's like understanding different communication styles. They have
Mm-hmm.
it kind of red, yellow, white, and blue. I'm definitely a red, which is the more, speaker, direct to the point. And that helps you kind of understand yourself in communicating with other people. So blues are very detail oriented. It's the people you talk to and you just want to shoot yourself because they're going into absolutely every detail. A lot of times it's
Yeah.
developers and it's just like, but you need to respect that. Whereas the whites are the peacemakers, the yellows are the fun loving kind of along for the ride. So that's probably the closest I've come to doing that. Why? I'm curious what triggered that
No, I mean
question.
it's interesting because almost every one of them are in some form like quadrant based.
Mhm.
You're the top left, top right, bottom left, or whatever. So it's just interesting because I think people that kind of tend to gravitate toward this skill set or have this skill set manifested in their journey, I think tend to fall into similar categories,
Yeah.
and they tend to be very intuitive. They tend to think on their feet very quickly. They tend to be curious. They engage people very easily. I mean, there's just a kind of a list of things you could say. You've got to have this, but you're also able to dissect and really process information quickly. Like if you hear, you could see somebody could go on a whiteboard and write out their entire business idea, and very quickly you could see the gaps, you could see the places that there's hiccups in the road.
Yeah.
You can analyze very quickly.
Yeah, I can do that. I'm not, a financial person, and I'm not a biz dev or business. I
Now,
I
these
don't
are
have
all
an MBA.
ideas. Yeah.
So, but I can look
Mm-hmm.
at an overarch of a pitch, of a plan, of how things are moving forward, and tell people where yes, where no. And sometimes it's speaking intuitively. I worked with a VC that they're raising their third fund, and some brilliant minds with huge, crazy track records, and I'm sitting there, giving them input into how they're going to present their deck. And sometimes I look at myself and I'm like, who the heck are you to tell these people that are managing hundreds of millions of dollars, and yet they're brilliant people and they're so into the story that sometimes they don't even realize
For sure.
how connecting the dots in another way can be so much more brilliant in telling the world the story.
I mean, sometimes experts are the worst people in the world to explain the process,
because it's so obvious
or the
to
problem,
them.
because they have so much, they don't even know what to what to leave out,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
right.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Dare you in details. I want to chase one other rabbit here, because I think this is so germane to who the audience is, and I think this comes up so often, is pricing. Now, I'm not asking you to tell us the price of your service. I'm asking you, what was the process to determine, because this is such a unique proposition. It's not a widget. So you're not saying, okay, the widget cost me 50 cents. I'm going to add 35% margin. I have this much in just fixed costs. So I have to sell it for $1. So how did you price yourself? And,
so that's
did you do it well early?
So that's an excellent question. And I think for years I was underpricing myself. And my husband he's like, he's one of my business drivers. And he's like, you're not charging enough. I'm like, yeah, but startups and then it always is best to work with someone who's objective from the outside.
Yep.
And it's very simple. You look at your funnel. I had somebody that came in and looked at the funnel, and he's like, you're closing way too many deals. He said, I want you to try an exercise. I want you to double your hourly rate. He's like, and that's going to be scary, and you're going to choke on that a few times. And I want you to double it and then see what happens. And it was astounding to see that my conversion did not fall. And
at all, or just
I told you so. I told you so.
Wow.
Maybe ever so slightly.
Yep.
He's like, I told you so. You should have been doing this years ago. And what's crazy is since then, which was probably about 6-7 years ago, I've continuously raised my rates annually. The thing is, and this is for every consultant or business. Now, it depends on your rarity and the value you're truly bringing. There's not a lot of people that can say that they do what I do. There's a lot of consultants out there. There's a lot of people that, say they're storytellers. There's a lot of great storytellers out there. You find your unique value. I can deliver a fully scripted deck in 2 hours. That's not something, and pricing, time is the most precious commodity to startups. Yep. So you always can feel out and see if you're not closing enough deals, then maybe you've overpriced. If you're closing too many, maybe you've underpriced. But it's always, that's why, and I have a wonderful coach that I'm working with now on like pricing strategy and moving forward. And as I'm doing more keynotes for the book coming out. So it's always good to work with someone. I'm a firm believer in outsourcing the things that you're not an expert at. Yep. I'm not an expert at pricing. I'm not an expert at my finances. I have a bookkeeper. I have a CPO. I mean, I'm very lucky to have people that know what they're doing where I don't. It's the same thing. I tell people, why struggle with telling a story when it's not your core skill?
Yeah.
Come to me. I'll do your taxes, your word taxes.
Right.
In 2 hours.
I love that analogy. I'll do your word taxes.
Your word taxes.
Yeah. Now everybody can understand that.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I hate the minute tax season rolls around. I go into, conniptions of misery. And since I have people that I trust, it's a lot less painful to look at, April.
That is amazing. Tell me, who is maybe the most, you don't have to name by name, but the most unique client you've ever worked with?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one, because I've had so many incredible stories. I mean, where do we go with unique? I think my favorite types of clients to work with are those in life sciences and biomed, things that are truly going to impact the human the human existence, right. Our bodies, our lives. So I work with an amazing company that had created a medicine, a pill that will slow and possibly halt symptoms of ALS.
Wow.
And the inspiration behind it and the story of the person who was an Iron Man and then was diagnosed with ALS, and he then became someone who was looking for every possible technology that could stop and create, and they were inspired by him to create this. So to me, those things with the stories that come with it, or another client I worked with whose father was diagnosed with diabetes in his 50s, and he went from being this thriving, amazing, athletic person to someone who couldn't get through the day without a nap.
Yeah.
And he went to all ends of the earth basically to find a solution, and then he scaled it and created something that helps people control their insulin level. So I mean, these are the things that inspire me. These are the things that I live for. I'm addicted to stories, and
Right,
I feel
stories that have a benefit. Story, I mean, just not storing for the sake of storing.
Look, I think that any story can be told in a way that shows a benefit. And then it's going to be the judgment call of the investors to see, okay, so is the benefit more for the world, for my bank account, for whatever? And either way is fine, because venture capitalists are not philanthropists. They're there to make the returns.
Exactly.
And there's much more of a movement nowadays towards true impact, where you can do doing good and doing well, the double bottom line.
Right.
And there's been a lot of talk about it for the last decade. I think only in the past couple of years have we really, truly seen it happening. But you have to be able to show both.
Yep.
And these things that change the world can take a very long time. So it's finding the balance. Just because you're doing something amazing and inspiring doesn't mean that you're going to get funded for it.
Yeah, and I think, those that are coming behind us are, the Gen Z, the alphas, they're demanding that. They're demanding that double bottom line.
They need to see value. Millennials too. They
for sure.
Ethical sourcing, stopping with fast fashion. So there's a different set of values happening nowadays, and companies have to align themselves with that.
So as you have journeyed and been the CEO and founder of your own company, what are 2 or 3 just real takeaways that you can look back and you think, man, if I knew these when I started, it would have made my life so much easier, but are somewhat generic and multi or broad application for people that are listening right now, that are sitting in the cube going, you know what, I've got an idea, I've got a thought, I want to do something. What would be helpful to them from your standpoint?
Excellent question. I think we touched on a couple of it. So don't negotiate with yourself. That's, my husband has said that to me many times, and it's so true. Always, if you're bringing value to the world, people will pay for it, and make sure that you're asking for enough and unapologetically, because if I'm helping a company raise several $1 million and keep their company alive and keep their employees employed, that's massive value. Another thing is, the more you can work in the space of what you truly love doing, the more you'll move forward. So all of a few years ago, I was like, okay, how can I scale myself? It's very hard to teach somebody to do what I do, because it's like this kind of internal makeup. So I'm like, okay, I don't think it's going to be training a bunch of people and having a bunch of employees. I don't want that. But what can I do to free up my time? Outsource absolutely everything you can that doesn't require your core skills and talents.
Good advice, yeah.
So whether it's finding a virtual assistant, whether it's finding someone to do your books and your taxes, I mean, whatever you're investing in them, is ask yourself, how much is your time worth, and how much time would it take you to do it? Because it's hard for a small business owner or for a startup to think about, oh my gosh, how am I going to spend that? What is the price if you don't? Is the question.
I mean, time is your most valuable commodity. And so
absolutely.
You're looking at it like Michael Gerber in the E-Myth talks about, work on your business instead of in it.
Yeah.
Don't be your own employee.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm behind that 100%. Another important thing I've learned along the way, and I was very lucky to listen to this early on, was don't listen to the voices. What do I mean by that? So when I was first starting out, pivoting into working with startups back in 2008 and looking for my new audience, once enterprise was imploding, And I noticed, and I went actually presented on this surgeon's behalf at the conference. He was there with me, but I did the pitches. It doesn't usually happen, but he was at high enough a level that it was accepted. And I saw the other companies there, and it broke my heart because they just got shot down before they even had the opportunity to open their mouths. And I was like, okay, this is my new audience. Startups need me. And then come the voices. Oh, well, startups aren't going to pay you. Oh, well, yeah, startups don't really believe in startups. So those are the voices that I'm talking, that people meaning well or not, but we know what the road to hell is paved with. And so if you truly believe in something and you truly see an opportunity, especially as an entrepreneur, don't let those voices deter unless you are hearing it again and again from your market.
Yep.
And you're understanding. Don't ignore the voices of your users. That's important. But all of the well-meaning people around saying, yeah, well, we don't really need that. Yeah. And that's an important thing. Know your competitive advantage if you're a startup. How are you different from others out there? Because there might be a crowded market, but you don't want to directly compete, do one-to-one what someone's doing. You need an advantage.
Right.
Doesn't mean you shouldn't start your company. You just need to know where your differentiation point is.
I've done this podcast we're in our 5th year, and it is amazing. I've talked to people from 30 different countries, more than 250 startup entrepreneurs, and I think that's the first time that I've ever heard somebody really drill down on this kind of don't listen to the naysayers, because you clarified that in such an interesting way. You said, listen to the right voices.
Yes.
It's not
the voices
all
you
external
trust.
voices are bad.
Yeah.
Listen to your market, listen to trusted advisors, listen to mentors. Don't listen to the people that are just.
And find your little team that's your A team, that those are the people you go to. Because if you listen, like sometimes I'll have founders, like at the end of every pitch session, they'll go and they'll change their deck, or they'll add in slides, and they end up with this, I call it a patchwork pitch. It's bloated, it's unrecognizable, and you can't change just because someone said it. You need to, take their advice, thank them, listen, is this something I truly agree with? You can always add a slide in backup, but just because so-and-so said it doesn't mean it's the word.
What a way to wrap us up today, Donna. Thank you so much for taking time right here at the end of the week. What a way to close out a good week. And I want you to tell people where they can find you online. Please talk about, and just really briefly about you've got a new book coming out.
Yes.
I want to make sure we're promoting that as well.
Absolutely.
And just close us out today.
Absolutely. So first of all, my website is Donna Griffit with a T, 2 F's and 1 T.com. I'm sure you'll have that in the show notes. And you can find out more about myself, my services. Please do mention the Rising Tide podcast, and there will be a special discount for you. Say you came through Kevin.
Great.
And in terms of the book, it's called Sticking to My Story, The Alchemy of Storytelling for Startups. And it's been 20 years in the writing because it's just a collection of everything that I have learned in the past 20 years. And it's all laid out, going back to the world of cooking. It's like my cookbook of my master kitchen. And it's really exciting to be able to release these recipes to the world and know that I can make an impact reaching founders all over. And it's just chock full of helpful tips and fully laid out plan of creating your deck on your own with stories of clients I've worked with, what's worked, what hasn't, tips for getting meetings, tips for being ready to meet investors, for your presentation style. So yeah, it's coming out late February, and you can also sign up for updates on that.
Can they pre-order it on Amazon now?
It'll be available for pre-order, the book itself on February 23rd.
Okay.
You can get the Kindle pre-ordered beforehand, and it will be on Amazon, yes.
So launching in February.
Yes.
All right. Well, Donna, thank you again for just taking the time.
Thank you
for
Kevin.
Sharing stories in our 30-minute slot we had scheduled here. What a way to end the week. And just thank you for playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Donna, have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you.
We hope you heard some great takeaways. Make sure you follow up with our guests today and show them the support they deserve. As always, thank you for listening and playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide.